Welcome to This Week in Morgan County. I'm your host, Russell Mokhiber. Our guest this week is Chuck Bergen. Chuck is a pastor here in Morgan County, West Virginia. Chuck, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
How long have you been a pastor?
Almost 4 years now.
Are you born and raised here?
Yes. Born and raised in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia.
Where'd you go to school?
West Virginia University.
And do you have to go to seminary school to be a pastor?
Depends on the tradition. So I went to, after college, I went to Reformed Theological Seminary in Orlando, and then graduated in May 2012, and then secured a position back home in 2013.
What churches do you pastor at?
I have three churches. The first, Michael's Chapel at 8:45 in the morning. That's out on Route 9. Wesley Chapel, which is Pius Ridge Road at 10 a.m. and Trinity Asbury here in town at 11.
And what made you want to be a pastor?
I don't think anybody really wants to be a pastor. It's more a calling that happens either in an instant or over a long period of time that God puts on your heart to preach the word to people and to help care for those that are in need.
And how did it happen for you?
At a revival when I was 14 years old, here at the high school gym, and man prayed over me. I went down for the altar call. Man prayed over me to be a minister of the gospel, to impact the lives of thousands. That's his words. And so I tried to avoid it for about 10 years.
Why did you try to avoid it?
I was a little bit greedy. You don't really make a whole lot of money. It's not a very prestigious position to be a pastor, and so I was seeking fame and approval from others, and so I wanted to be someone that had a lot of money and a lot of toys. I still want a lot of toys, but to be a pastor, you kind of have to put off some of those desires, earthly desires, so that eternal things, eternally good things can happen.
When you were seeking goods, toys, what was your thought process? Were you thinking, I'm going to make it in business, or how did you think you would do it?
Business, originally. I wanted to be a business owner or work in the business industry. Then I failed college calculus, and that was the end of that. I can't do math, apparently. I shouldn't have slept in Mr. Fierno's trigonometry classes in high school.
Well, could it be that, was this a situation where you said, okay, I'm not going to get the toys, so I'm going to seek God?
No. I think I have many connections that would help me to get a job, to make a lot of money. Yeah. But when my last year in college, I was sitting down with my family, and I was a journalism major at the time. Mm-hmm. And that was when all of the print news organizations were stopping printing, many of them. And we said, okay, so what am I going to do? I have this news editorial journalism degree. What am I going to do? And I remembered this calling from 10 years ago, before that. And then my father said, well, what about youth ministry? That I had done an internship at a church that summer before, and really enjoyed working with kids and helping them grow in their relationship with God. And he said, well, what about youth ministry? And so I started thinking about that a little bit more, and looked into the different churches and seminaries that they would require, and eventually settled on it, and away we went.
And so you minister at these three churches, mm-hmm. which
yes.
are United Methodist churches.
Yes.
What made you choose United Methodist over any other Christian denomination?
It wasn't my first choice. Our story is a little bit interesting. I went to a more Presbyterian, conservative Presbyterian seminary, and was applying to jobs through there. A couple months before graduation, we said, oh, I'll have a job, everything will be fine. So my wife and I, we got pregnant and went ahead, started our family. Then didn't get a job right away. And our firstborn, she was born 3 months ahead of time. We were in the hospital for 110 days, and we couldn't leave Orlando because of all of her specialists and her needs. And so I had to turn a couple job offers down because we couldn't go. They were a little bit too far out in the country. Then
Not in Morgan County.
Not in Morgan County.
Right.
Then a pastor here, Andrew Cooney, he gave my name to his superior, and he called me up. It was a summer day. I was working maintenance at a church that we were going to, and he called me and said, hey, do you want a job? And I said, yeah. It was nearly a year after graduating from seminary, and we were running out of money, and I was having to do a lot of odd jobs just to pay rent. And so God opened the door here, and we've enjoyed it. There's some disagreements that we have with the Methodist Church, but I think everybody has disagreements with every church today.
What was it your intent to come back and minister here or pastor here in Morgan County?
No. That was never a thought in my mind. I figured that I would go to a city and do my wife. She's really blessed and gifted with inner city homeless ministry, and so we figured that we would go in that direction, work at a church in a city, and it just the doors never opened. So, Morgan County, we came back.
Is your wife from Morgan County?
No, she's from Charleston, West Virginia.
And was her work in inner city ministry in Charleston?
No, she's her work, her career is an occupational therapist. Okay. She has training through some college courses in some social work, homeless ministry, just helping people develop themselves so that they can get back on their own 2 feet again.
Now, you mentioned earlier before we started that there are 55 churches here in Morgan
Yes.
County. What's the breakdown in terms of denominations?
There are 16 United Methodist churches. So that happened through many mergers from decades ago, and churches that were Evangelical United Brethren, that denomination no longer exists. They merged with the Methodist group to make the United Methodist Church. So we have 16 of those. There are, I want to say, 4 or 5 Baptist churches. There's a Catholic church right in town, Presbyterian Episcopal church.
If someone is interested in going to church in Morgan County, how would you describe the differences?
Not to be, not necessarily politically, but theologically, there's a range from conservative to liberal, and even within the large group of Methodist churches, there are conservative Methodist churches and progressive liberal Methodist churches. And so if you wanted to go to church in Morgan County, my biggest advice is just to visit around and see who goes where and what the styles of worship are. Ask pastors what the makeup of their congregations. And I'm kind of a amalgamation of all of any and all. I have farmers that are that's their way of life, and I have businessmen. I have people that are very active in the community. I have new folks that have moved in, come from outside of here, and so I don't really have a conservative or liberal church. I'm more. We kind of sit in the middle as far as everything else.
When people go to church, what are people seeking?
I think they're seeking, I hope that they're seeking God. If you go to church and you're not really seeking God in any way, shape, or form, then you're not really there for the right reasons. That's our primary function, is to be a place that worships God. I think as well people go for fellowship, to meet other people. Where else on a Sunday are you going to find 50 people gathered? Even during the week, where you're going to find 20 people gathered for a Bible study. So just to be around others, to share burdens. If you're going through something, say you or someone you know is going through cancer, we're happy to pray for you, to help financially when there's a need, if there's a need, if we can help. And so we strive to do a number of things, but hopefully our focus is on God.
And when you pastor every Sunday, what are you seeking? What are you hoping to do?
I'm hoping to lead people into a deeper relationship. I think that this is something I learned as a kid here, and after going to college and seminary and kind of seeing the differences in other areas, that sometimes we can be a little too shallow in our love for God, in our devotion to God, and so we get involved in a number of different organizations and groups, which are all good, but we forget in a way that we're Christians first. And so my hope is to lead people into a little bit deeper relationship with God that helps them to serve others that are in need, that don't know God, that are not Christians, that maybe they are totally opposed to Christianity. My hope is to help them have a sense of confidence that their relationship with God, their knowledge of Scripture is well, so that they can go and minister to those that are going to challenge them and even be a threat to them.
Well, you mentioned when we started the interview that in your making your decision whether to be a minister, you had this little bit of a balancing act on. You wanted toys, you said.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you could reflect on the hyper-commercialism of our society and how that relates to Christianity.
Yeah, that's something that I struggle with daily. My wife, she is a good balance for me in terms of how we spend our money and just making sure that we're using our resources wisely and in a God-honoring fashion. Money is mentioned in the Bible more than any other topic because of the way it can rule over us. I think some people get addicted to spending, just to spend, and so we acquire so much stuff that we don't know what to do with it. And we look at churches that are really big. A few of us were talking about earlier that the focus really isn't on God, it's on fashion, or it's on how nice of a car you drive or how big your home is. And Jesus, he was homeless. He didn't have his own place of residence. He did not, he was a couch surfer in many ways and depended on others and their needs. The church in Acts chapter 2 is described as if anyone is in need, they were selling their possessions to provide for them. And so today we have, in a lot of ways, what gets publicized is the exact opposite of that. That a lot of Christians are just, they're buying fancy suits. I won't drop any names, that might get me in trouble, but there's pastors that it's all about how they present themselves, how they look, and that the prosperity gospel, it says if you give to God, God will give twofold back to you, and that's not really true. It's not what the Bible says. And so so I get a little fired up about money and how we as Christians use it to bless ourselves instead of blessing others. I want us to help others that are in need as much as we can.
Well, in some ways then, what you're saying is we live in an unchristian country because you're seeing this mass disparity in wealth distribution with money being shifted to the 1%.
We spend more on Christmas just for toys and decorations than we do on anything else. The average, a few years ago I read a statistic, the average family spends $1,000 on Christmas. And I'm thinking, okay, I don't have $1,000 to spend on Christmas, so somebody does. But when we really add up the numbers, we go through that checking book through the year and see how much we've spent, it's kind of disheartening and depressing how much we, and the holiday is to celebrate Christ's birth, not just to give toys to one another, to our kids.
Well, you would think that with 55 churches in Morgan County that we would be a better society, because you would hope that the church, the ministries, are sending the message, as you put it, of Christ.
Yeah.
And the message of Christ is to look after others. But are we seeing that? I mean, for the 55 churches?
In many ways, yes. Sometimes it's hard for smaller churches where Michael's Chapel, for instance, there's a dozen people, and they're all older, or most of them are older, in their 60s, 70s, 80s even, and so their energy level is a little bit not as much as it could be, or as it was 20 years ago when they were all younger and able to do a lot more for others. But you need a little bit of a critical mass to really be able to help others, because the church building costs a lot of money just to be able to keep that open and to be able to pay pastors and piano players and all that. And so in some ways we exhaust ourselves just doing that stuff, just taking care of ourselves. If, say, there were 40 churches that all had a little bit larger number to them, we could do more. There are a few things that we do. The Morgan County Interfaith Emergency Coalition, I think I have that right. That's a food pantry that is housed at the Catholic Church. They're open a few days a week. They help pay electric bills or rent when that's needed, and they get donations from most churches in the county. We take my 3 churches. We take up a collection once a month, just to add into that. We have a Lenten luncheon series every year. About 100 people attend. It's all donation. A pastor from the community speaks during the season of Lent, from Ash Wednesday to Easter, and we usually raise around $2,000 for that group. I know Berkeley Baptist Church, they have a food pantry that they've been able to get through some state and federal funding to help them be able to do that. There's a group of pastors right now and community members that are establishing a homeless ministry this next winter. We couldn't get it started this year. Next winter, we hope to have cold weather shelters set up, different churches along 522 right in town. There's about a dozen churches there, and hoping to get at least 5 or 6 that are willing to open their doors up for folks that need a warm place to stay when it's 10 degrees outside. Thankfully, we've had a rather mild winter so far. Trinity Asbury, the third church on my Sunday schedule, we just spent a good bit of money to renovate a space, our social hall, and there's a few rooms above it, to what we hope to do is start a family ministry resource center to help kids and their parents. So it's not just an after-school program. Develop them to be better citizens, to grow into better citizens. We have a 33% childhood poverty rate in our county. 68% of our kids age 5 to 18 qualify for free or reduced lunches, meals at school. And so there's a problem. There's a great need in our county. And so the churches are doing what they can. I joke a little bit, as far as the economy goes, the only way we really impact that is by going to lunch on Sundays when service is over. But even then, it's hard to do because that costs money, and some of these old retired farmers don't have a lot of extra spare cash. I've got one guy. He's still active as a hay farmer, and he's in his mid 70s, and so he'll do it until until the day he goes beyond the Jordan and we lay him to rest.
What's you given the impression that your population in church, and you minister to more than 100 people a week. What's the average age of the people who attend your churches?
Most folks are going to be between 60 and 80. We have a decent number of younger families we've been able to reach out to, and some that were going there before I came. And then there's probably our smallest number, and that's what kind of hurts us because they're the most active usually, is folks between 45 and 60 that they have energy, they kind of know who they are, and kids aren't necessarily home. Some of them are empty nesters, and so they're able to do a lot more work, but we don't have as many of those.
Why is that? Why is that population declining?
The boomer generation leaves the church faster than any other. So even millennials, I'm of the older millennials, we don't leave the church as fast as boomers do. And so that's more a nationwide problem than just at my few churches.
When I was a young student, I attended a lecture by a religious teacher who, his name was Ivan Illich, and he wrote books on Christianity.
I think I've heard that name.
And he said that Christ taught us that if there's someone who's hungry, feed them. And if there's someone without a home, take them in. But then the church came along and said, hey, you don't have to do that. Give us money and we'll take care of it. And I'm wondering about that situation, about Christianity in the person versus Christianity in the church.
Sure. That is a definite difference in how we function. We kind of put on the face, go to church, put our $20 in the plate, and go home, and that's the extent of our Christianity, and that goes into that shallowness that I was mentioning earlier, where we're kind of, in a lot of ways, there are too many surfacey Christians that they just want to put on a face, and not as many of those folks go to church anymore because there's not that societal benefit. Oh, I'm a Christian. Okay, who cares? We don't have that benefit any longer that we did maybe in the 60s, 70s, 80s. But we still see that here in Morgan County a good bit, I think. And so that deeper personal relationship with God is what I hope that says, okay, we have a troubled teen. Their parents are going through a divorce. There's abuse in the home. Is there somebody that you have that's able to take that child in for a month or 2 months? I know of several. I can list off several offhand that do that are willing to do that. But sometimes just those folks aren't enough. We need more that are able to do that. And hopefully that happens more. But there is a big difference. I agree with that wholeheartedly, that there's a big difference in how we act as individuals versus how we act as a group.
Churchgoers. I mean, we just have a couple minutes left, but I wanted to ask you about the current state of politics and Christianity. Would you agree that if Christ were looking at the state of politics in the United States today, that he would say, a pox on both your houses? This is unchristian behavior.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, sure. Jesus was not political, but he was very political at the same time. Render to Caesar what is Caesar's, but and so he also made a lot of other political statements. His main focus in his ministry was on the church and how Christians, how his followers should act. And that's not necessarily the Republican Party. That's not necessarily the Democratic Party. Jesus was a financial conservative. The Bible talks about if you don't work, the Apostle Paul says, if you don't work and this becomes a habit in your life, then you shouldn't eat. But we also see the church in Acts 2 selling their possessions to provide for those that are in need. Deuteronomy 15 says that there will always be the poor in our land, and so we must take care of them. So when we look at how the church gets their hands dirty and how we talk about politics, it is a little bit disheartening. I try to wade those waters as carefully as I can because, like I said, I've got Republicans, I've got Democrats, I've got folks that they don't want to hear anything political from the pulpit, but Jesus was a political person, and our politics is a result of our actions and our thoughts and what we know.
Well, thank you very much for your good work. And if people want to get in touch with you or attend one of the churches and get more information, is there a website or way they can get in touch with you?
In the Morgan Messenger, there's a page with all the churches. Good luck figuring out which one's which a little bit. But if you look for my name, Pastor Chuck Bergen, Michael's Chapel, Wesley Chapel, and Trinity Asbury, we're all in there with our address and service time.
And thank you for joining us, and thank you for watching This Week in Morgan County.